Imagine falling in love with the same man every time you are reincarnated, only to meet a brutal and untimely death. This is the tragic fate of our protagonist Agnes. Let's rewind a bit and start from the beginning. Set in 1688, London, a time of superstition, unrest, and public spectacles, Agnes finds herself staring idly at her spinning wheel. Her days feel monotonous, as though something vital is missing in her life. An indescribable emptiness gnaws at her, though she cannot name it. Suddenly, her beloved dog, George, snatches a ball of yarn and bolts out the door. Agnes calls after him but ultimately loses sight of him. Frustrated, she notices a commotion nearby. A crowd is gathering around the town square execution site. Curiosity piqued, Agnes decides to investigate and joins some friends already in attendance. Whispers ripple through the crowd. They've come to witness the execution of Alexander Macbeth, a preacher condemned as a heretic. His sermons, it is said, incited unrest and defied the established church. The executioner steps forward and removes the mask from Alex's face. The moment Agnes sees him, the world around her stills. Time itself seems to bend. His eyes meet hers, an unsettling, magnetic connection that feels both ancient and inescapable. Agnes cannot look away, her heart pounding with an inexplicable sense of recognition. Though she has never seen this man before, her soul knows him. Alex, ever the opportunist, tries to use Agnes as his decoy. He whispers, promising her that they will meet once again in her dreams. The executioners, unimpressed, drag him back toward his fate. Panic overtakes Agnes as she watches the gruesome scene unfold. Driven by a sudden, overwhelming need to save him, she rushes toward the platform. But as she stumbles, tripped by her own mischievous dog George, her forward momentum carries her straight into the path of a gleaming poleaxe. Agnes dies a painful death. While the guards are distracted, Alex escapes from his captors to freedom. Agnes awakens in another life, reincarnated into the year 1793. This time, her life is a stark contrast to her humble past. She lives in luxury, surrounded by opulence and status. Married to a cold and ruthless aristocrat, she moves through her gilded cage of privilege with an aching emptiness. Her one comfort is her maid, a quiet and attentive confidant to whom Agnes pours out her restless thoughts. Sitting in her grand drawing room, Agnes confesses to the maid, "I feel as though something vital is missing. I have everything a woman could want, yet I feel hollow." That afternoon, during a strained lunch with her husband George, Agnes grows uneasy. Something about his cold, rigid demeanor reminds her of George, her beloved dog from her previous life. A sudden, chilling memory flashes in her mind, her untimely death. The sensation is fleeting, but leaves her unsettled. Later that day, while traveling by carriage to a renowned wig shop in preparation for an upcoming ball, Agnes spots a highwayman who commands the driver to halt, but the coachman didn't stop. But Agnes catches a glimpse of him, his stance, his voice, even the piercing glint of his eyes. And she feels the world tilt because he is her Alex. At the wig shop, Agnes purchases a lavish wig that makes her feel momentarily radiant. Returning home, she excitedly tells her maid about the encounter with Alex, whom she considers as her soulmate. The maid's face pales. Though she listens dutifully, her heart is heavy because she is deeply in love with Agnes, which Agnes knew but didn't act on it. The maid, who is called Meg, informs Agnes that George is finally ready to consummate the marriage. Agnes freezes. With a heavy heart, Agnes retreats to her chambers, resigned to fulfill her duty as a wife. But George doesn't make things any easier as he commands her to act like a dog. The next day, Scipio, an advisor to the king, approaches Agnes with a quiet, calculated demeanor. His resentment is clear. He believes himself far more fit to rule than the king he advises. Wanting to overtake the king to rule the kingdom, he plants a seed of doubt in Agnes' mind, saying that she can't escape him, and she is a slave just like him, and encourages her to kill the king, which would be the only way she could escape her husband's tyrant hold. His words settle over her like a shadow, lingering long after he's gone. That night, Agnes retreats to the comfort of her books. It's her only escape, the only place where she feels free. But the moment shatters when her husband storms into the room, fury etched across his face. Without warning, he snatches the book from her hands and hurls it into the fire. Determined to reclaim some part of herself, Agnes makes a bold decision. Along with her maid, she slips out of the castle the following morning, seeking solace in the one person she believes will understand, Alex. But Alex, who always prioritizes his own well-being than of others, has his eyes fixed on only one thing: her precious jewelry. Once the job is done, her so-called man of dreams shows his true face. With cold efficiency, he knocks her down, leaving her alone and betrayed. Agnes wakes to the sound of her husband's voice, his rage now volcanic. He demands answers, yelling about the stolen jewelry. At the grand ball, Agnes enters the glittering hall with her husband, the air thick with music and chatter. Almost immediately, her eyes fall on Alex, now a favorite among the women. Dressed in opulence and exuding charm, he has clearly risen to wealth built upon the very jewelry he had stolen from her. Drawn to him, Agnes slips away with Alex to a secluded area. The space feels charged with unspoken words, and Agnes doesn't hold back. She opens up about their past connection, her voice trembling with desperation as she pleads to take her with him to France. Alex's expression is unreadable, his silence louder than words. But before he can respond, their stolen moment shatters. Agnes's husband appears, his face twisted with suspicion and anger. At the castle, Agnes, in her fury and frustration, lashes out, grabbing his nose and pulling it hard until it's bloody and bruised. The king has had enough. Her behavior, her defiance, and her inability to abide by the rules of court. He slaughters her, and her life is once again snuffed out. But she is hopeful that in her next life she will finally be with Alex. Agnes reincarnates again, and it's the 1980s, and she finds herself in a new life. She has moved from London to New York, a city of flashing lights and booming music, to chase after Alex, who has returned, this time as a pop star, his face plastered across billboards and records. Agnes meets Meg, who is her best friend in this new city. Like before, she is madly in love with Agnes, which Agnes is oblivious to. Agnes keeps getting a vision of herself from her past life and can no longer ignore the patterns. Every time she encounters Alex, her soulmate, she meets a tragic end. Determined to understand, she seeks out a tarot reader in the heart of the city. The tarot reader, cloaked in mystery, listens to Agnes's tale and shuffles the cards in silence. At last, he pulls one card from the deck. It's the Fool. For a moment, he stares at it, his expression unreadable. "If you keep getting reincarnated, you're missing something," he says cryptically. He doesn't explain further, his words hanging in the air like a riddle, and he sends Agnes on her way, lost, yet closer to answers than ever before. It had been a few weeks since Meg last saw Agnes, and the silence between them weighed heavily on her. One afternoon, Meg unexpectedly arrives at Agnes's apartment, her concern for her friend clear. Agnes reveals that she is in love with Alex, declaring him her soulmate from past lives. She explains that they seem to be tragically destined to meet, only to have their love cut short, as if they are trapped in a cycle of reincarnation. Meg listens in silence for a moment, a deep concern knitting her brows together. Finally, she speaks, telling Agnes to see a shrink who could help her. Meg finally opens up about her feelings towards Agnes, but Agnes coldly replies, "I would rather be a slave than be a lesbian." Hurt by Agnes's words, Meg quietly leaves the apartment without another word. Sensing someone is watching her, Agnes throws open the blinds and comes face to face with her husband from a previous life. Though she doesn't remember him, nor does he recognize her, he is strangely obsessed with her. His room is a shrine to her image, filled with countless photographs. Agnes arranges a meeting with Scipio, now a manager at Alex's record label, to request a back pass to interview Alex in order to write an article about him. Scipio, dissatisfied with his current employer, openly admits that he believes his boss lacks true talent. Scipio informs Agnes that he is aware she's not a writer at all. He claims to have contacted the agency she allegedly worked for, only to be told they have no record of her employment. He then proposes a chilling deal: kill Alex, and this way Alex's record label will skyrocket, guaranteeing her the coveted back pass. Agnes, desperate for a chance to meet Alex, accepts the pass and leaves the restaurant. Suddenly, a vivid memory flashes before her eyes, a gruesome scene from a past life where her head is brutally severed. The memory, so real, leaves her shaken. Agnes, driven to desperation, throws a rock at the window of a tarot reader's house. She demands answers, desperate to understand why. Whenever she tries to save Alex, she meets a tragic end. The tarot reader, after a chilling pause, delivers a chilling verdict. If you wish to live, you must kill him this time. Determined, Agnes meets Alex backstage as expected. He doesn't recognize her. He dismisses her story of past lives as the ramblings of a delusional groupie, insulting her with disdain. Agnes, enraged, pulls out a gun, intending to shoot him to end the cycle of reincarnation. However, at the last minute, she falters. Instead, she hands the gun to Scipio and flees the scene. Agnes visits the shrink as advised by her friend. To her surprise, the shrink reinforces the idea that her past lives are mere fantasies, a product of her imagination. She encourages her, stating that she has made significant progress by seeking help. Agnes, feeling a newfound sense of peace, excitedly meets Meg. She announces her intention to marry George, explaining that she has been seeing him everywhere and believes he might be a suitable match. Perhaps even a way to finally escape the obsessive cycle of her delusions. As Agnes is about to walk down the aisle, she experiences a chilling vision. George, her seemingly harmless fiancé, brutally murders her in her previous lives. Then, another memory surfaces, a past life in 1949, where her husband was a renowned magician. This time, however, Agnes spotted Alex in the audience. Enraged, her husband turned back and threw a knife, which ultimately killed her. Agnes, horrified by the vision, flees the wedding. However, George, driven by a chilling determination, hunts her down and kills her again. As Agnes is dying, Meg weeps uncontrollably. Suddenly, Agnes finds herself in a strange, ethereal realm. Scipio appears, informing her that this was her final life in the cycle of reincarnation. He urges her to join the consciousness, a higher plane of existence. But Agnes, unwilling to accept this fate, rebels. She yearns to experience a life fully, a life where she wasn't constantly chasing Alex and their tragic destiny. With a defiant will, she returns to her body. She meets Alex once more, this time embracing the chaos. They share a passionate kiss, a final act of defiance against their shared fate. Then, in a desperate bid to finally break the curse, Agnes kills them both simultaneously. Now the year is 2117. Agnes and Meg are together, living a life of their own choosing. Agnes, a fierce rebel fighting for some unknown cause, and Meg, her steadfast companion. However, Agnes, thinking she has broke the curse, is utterly dumbfounded when she meets Alex, who is a police officer now, and utters, "I love you" to Agnes. And with that, the story ends. Thank you for watching till the end.